cohort of the JLO Virtual Young Scholar Program to our community. The recordings from our first and second webinars are available from the JLO VirtYS page. So if you're interested, please have a look. And if you want to share with your contacts, please feel free. For those of you who have joined us for the first time, the JLO VirtYS program was established last year, and we have had 7 scholars who worked on their proposed research papers within the 3 JLO clusters. Today's webinar brings together 2 young scholars, Dr. Zhiling Wang from the Netherlands and Dr. Ömer Töksal Doruk from Turkey. Both of their projects have been, which we will hear about today, have benefited from the advice from Professor Francesco Pastore from the University of Campania in Italy. Before I introduce our 2 speakers, I would like to cover some housekeeping rules. So today's webinar will be recorded, or is it already being recorded, Matlub?
Already being recorded.
Okay, it's already been recorded in case this may affect your decision to turn on video or do different things. We will be able to share the link with you after the event, maybe in a couple of days, and we welcome you to revisit the content yourself or share with colleagues. Each presentation will take 15 minutes and then will be followed by 10 minutes discussion. Given the time restrictions, I would encourage you to save your questions to after the presentation, or maybe type it in the chat, and so we in question and answer chat box, so we can get back to them so you don't forget. I will keep the timing and try to signal in some way to the presenters if we are going too much over. I'll probably come in with the voice to let the speakers know. So without further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. Zhiling Wang is an assistant professor at the Erasmus University of Rotterdam and a JLO fellow. Today, she will talk to us about her JLO VirtYS project, where she investigated how the international study programs affect native students. The screen is yours, Zhiling, please.
Thank you very much, Elena. I thought it's a 20 minutes presentation, so just stop me when I'm running over too much, and I'll try to speed up. So hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. Today's working paper is "Do International Study Programs Pay Off for Native Students?" And it's a joint work with my JLO supervisor, Francesco Pastore, and 2 other colleagues. What you can, wait, I cannot change my, so what you can see is that the growth of this globalization of higher education really take off in recent years, and maybe even actually it took place already earlier. So in Europe, we see the total number of English taught bachelor programs. It has a very, around 500 in the middle of 2009, and it really increases to 5 or 6 times by the time that is recorded in 2017. So there are multiple reasons for this. One is, of course, that European countries realize the necessity to standardize its credit. So it makes these courses more likely to be in English, so that students can exchange credits and they can move freely between universities. And there's also another reason, is that after global financial crisis, all countries need to boost their financial incomes in the revenues for education. So they also opened up a lot of English taught programs to attract students and also have them paying the tuition fees. So there's a huge debate on these international programs, that although we see a lot of positive benefits, because first of all, they contribute to tuition fees, and also they make the educational environment much more international than before. And also because of the inflow of foreign students, they contribute substantially to the regional level cultural diversity. But there's also ongoing criticism on this. is that usually these international students, they are worried that they would crowd out the enrollment chances for native students. And of course, a further concern is that on the future job labor market, they are also compete with them. And so it's a general concerns that people have on foreign students, on native students. And there's another aspect of concern is coming from this erosion of local language identity, because they think in their own country, not enough teachers are qualified to really teach English well. And also it will make the students less capable of mastering their own local language. So both these supporters and opponents base their positions on conjectures rather than empirical evidence, because even until today, we haven't seen very, very scholarly evidences that really investigating the detailed benefits and disadvantage of these programs. So if you look at the news in recent years, there are different countries are taking different actions. For example, in 2018, Danish government started to cut their English programs. And their reason is just that these students are not contributing enough to this tuition fee, and they don't stay on the labor market, so they are not contributing to the taxes. And in 2019, the Netherlands also started to dumping degrees in English, but their reason is different. They just say they want to have students to join Dutch programs instead of English programs for native students. But if you look at France, they actually plan to boost this English taught programs to a great extent. And this is a country they want to increase international student numbers. So you see that there are contrasting actions taking place in different countries. So our research question for this paper is that what is the real impact of attending international study programs for these native graduates, and how do they perform on their labor market once they graduated from these programs? Because I think it will provide a good insight for policymakers whether they should introduce more of these programs or cut these programs. So our novelty of this paper has 3 dimensions. So first is that because we have administrative data sets, so we are able to investigate the impacts both in the short run and in the long run. And secondly, as we have detailed information on the records, we can better tackle the heterogeneity of these returns. And thirdly, we further investigate what are the mechanisms of these wage premiums that I will elaborate later. So the contribution to the strands of literature is, first of all, previous papers on globalization of higher education were heavily focused on enrollment, but not pretty much on the native graduates' labor market outcomes. And second of all, although there are a lot of papers talking about the beneficial impact of high-skilled immigration, but these benefits from the social interaction, knowledge transfer takes place in workplace, but not in the study place before you actually go on to a job market. And the last 2 is the benefit you can have from having foreign peers in your study environment. One is, of course, native graduates have better English proficiency. And secondly, because you are exposed to this more culturally diversified environment, so that will bring to some future benefits. In case that I'm running over time, so let me present you our preliminary results for this paper at this moment. So we found that students who graduated from international programs, starting from their first calendar year after graduation, they obtain a wage premium of 2.3% compared to those peers from attending a domestic program. And we see that this wage premium keeps growing every year. It grows at a pretty steady rate, about 1% increase every year. And when talking about heterogeneity, these benefits were pronounced in non-STEM majors and also students from low-ranked universities and those who end up in smaller cities for their first job. For mechanisms, what we found is that this wage premium is largely driven by their first choice of the first job. And the initial wage advantage goes with them in all later years of work. And I'll show you more tables later. For the data sources, we use this administrative data set from Statistics Netherlands, and we have detailed information on all students' records, educational or family or job history. we restrict our analysis period between 2006 to 2014, and it's all master students who graduated from a Dutch university. So it's not bachelor, because the globalization of bachelor takes place later, and also because a lot of bachelor students, they will go first to master program and then to job. So there might be a lot of confounding factors. That's why in the end, we choose master students who most likely will directly go to the job markets. And they are all native graduates. Both of their parents are Dutch. This is just to give you a bit of classification of the study fields that we have. We have 10 broad fields with the detailed narrow fields and the third, even more disaggregate level of fields. So the design of this identification is that under each detailed category of fields, we do see that some detailed fields have some international programs, while others are domestic programs. So in this case, we think that these attending international programs are treated individuals versus those who attended domestic programs. They are control individuals. And this figure, these two figures just give you a bit of a feeling that how the globalization of higher education is in the Netherlands for different categories of broad field. So you can see that it has a steady increase, both in terms of and share. And if you look at the dependent variable, that is a wage level we are interested, you see that for student, the dot here just plots the average yearly starting wage. So you can see that already in the first job, the unconditional difference, you have a stable wage premium. And this is about 10, 11% of the wage level. And when we see the wage growth, so here we plot for different cohorts. When we calculate the wage premium before a student who attends international program versus a domestic program, you see that this wage premium also keeps growing over the years of work. So these different colors just represent people who graduated from different cohorts. But in general, you see that there's a starting wage premium level, and then it goes up with the years passes by. So the identification method we use in this paper is Coarsened exact matching, because an obvious concern is that people are worried that students attending an international program is a better cohort because they already fully proficient in English, and then they make this strategic decision just because they are better. If that is the case, this will introduce substantial self-selection and omitted variable bias here in our regression. So we go for this Coarsened exact matching, and we select these variables to control how comparable these students are. So we restrict them very strictly in the same gender, in the same cohort, in the same detailed field of study at the same university. And also we control for their previous exposure in cultural diversity and their parents' income level. So here it's proxied by the fathers. So the main idea of Coarsened exact matching is that it creates different cells or different beings, and you assign students to different beings. And in the end, once a treated student is matched with some control students, and this being is exactly the small room we're going to compare them. So this will lose a lot of individuals because you cannot find, not all these treated students can find a comparable peers. And also there are a lot of students who are not matched. So using this 1-to match method, we in the end have around 16,000 graduates and 78,000 observations, because we can observe them for more years. On average here, we control up until 5. And this will give us about 28% of the full sample. Our identification strategy is very straightforward. On the left-hand side, it's a log of wage of individual at the same program P, cohort C, and measured in T. So here we interact whether you attended an international program with the dummies standing for how many years after graduation. So we make it 1 year, 2 years, up until 5 years after graduation. And the most important thing is, since we have this Coarsened exact matching, so this phi m already controls for all these potential confounding factors, and this is a matched being fixed effects. And I have to say this is very, very strict restriction in this identification. So about the baseline results, the first column is the one that it's the most preferred specification. So here we see that when you're attending international programs, 1 year since graduation, you have a starting wage premium of 2.3, and this goes up up until here about 5.9, so about 6 at the 5 years since graduation. And in the first column, we actually only take the sample that is 1-to-n matched. So that means 1 treated students matched and control students. We control for these fixed effects, and especially this match being fixed effects. And in the second and third column, we gradually loosen this restriction. So first of all, we throw away this match being fixed effects. And you can see that the wage premium clearly goes up. And in the third column, we even loosen it further, is that we go for the full sample. There we have more observations, but what you can see is here, these numbers cannot tell us the real impact because it's just the unconditional difference. And this is the result that when you are not controlling for the self-selection issue. And these 3 columns were just, we're playing with a different combination of fixed effects, because these are supposed to be driven by your choice, of course, because by attending international universities, you might be more likely to sort into and having the strictest control fixed effects, we still see that the wage premium persists. And the last column is just 1-to-1 matched. So here we have even smaller sample size, because we say that 1 student is only allowed to be matched to another 1 control students.
Zhiling, sorry, it's 2 minutes. I tried to signal other way, but it didn't work.
Okay.
Please continue.
Okay, I'll try to speed up and skip some slides. So for the heterogeneity, we don't see much on the gender, but we do see non-STEM has this pattern, and universities with lower rankings have this pattern, and graduates who work in smaller cities have this pattern. So it's basically because, for example, in the Netherlands, Amsterdam is already international enough, so the benefit of attending international programs might be more pronounced in smaller cities where you do have this better English proficiency and the social skills. For mechanisms, so as I said, we checked 3 hypotheses. One is, do these students got substantially different jobs at the first firm? So what we can see is that for their first job, international program students are more likely to go to bigger firm and having fixed contract, and it's more international, and firms are more likely to do trade. So this clearly points to the fact that these firms are better than those who attended domestic programs. And the second hypothesis we test is that whether students from international programs are more likely to switch firms, because when you switch firms, you always have a higher bargaining power, so that will brings you a wage premium. So we checked that the total number of firms in different years interval, we didn't find anything. So that means the wage premium is not driven by their more frequent mobility across firms. And thirdly, we check whether these students are more likely to get promotion within the same firm. So what we do, for example, in the first 2 columns, when we control for the first firm fixed effects, this wage premium actually dies out. But if we don't control for it, this is still here. And this is the same for all these years interval, basically meaning that the first choice of the job is important, and that initial wage advantage persists you in all the job later, but in all these years of experience later. Okay, I'll skip this too. So the last page, to wrap up, we investigate the wage premium from attending international study programs in a non-English speaking context. I think this is pretty new. The main takeaway of this presentation is that these international programs really endow native students a head start in the career, and this advantage will persist in all years. The policy implications, I think there are at least 3 directions we can think of. Nowadays, we have seen frequently on the news that escalating restrictions to foreign students in the United States. And maybe that's a chance for Europe later to attract more of these international students to Europe and deal with the labor shortage problem. And second direction is definitely having these results. I think it points to the fact that Europe should encourage the proliferation of English programs. And thirdly is about accompanying these results. I think another direction is that the government should also think about the policies retaining high-skilled foreign graduates, especially after they finish their study, because that will contribute to more this peer interaction on the workplace. Okay, thank you all. Yeah, this is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Maybe you could stop sharing the screen so we can see everyone in an easier way. Thank you very much, Zhiling. Very interesting. We don't have any questions in the chat, but if you would like to ask, just go ahead and ask, as in, yes, please, Klaus.
Yeah, very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. Now, the issue I have is, maybe I haven't understood it completely, the intensity of the international program. Does this play a role, how international it's really? So if a Dutch student goes to Germany across the border, it might not help so much. And the other issue is this somehow related to with the field I'm studying? So it must be maybe in one field more important than in another.
Sorry, Klaus, if I understand correctly, you're asking the process of this internationalization of the programs.
No, I understand internationalization means you are in this program, 1.0, a dummy, yes? Is this how I understand it?
Yeah.
But you could also think about intensity. I mean, how international is an international program? Depends. So see, if I'm a Dutch student and I go to China, that's different than I go to Germany or France.
I see. Yeah, that can be something done, because here we used whether you have English track, so it can only give us 1.0 dummy. But I think what we can further explore is the composition of the students, because even one program provides English, you could check like what is the background of those foreign students attending these programs.
And the other issue was field. Are these? I mean, is it the same for economics or, let's say, English or whatever? I mean, it's teacher, is this different from another field of study?
Yeah, that could be. At least from the basic summary statistics, we see this ICT increases a lot, and also e-com and social science. Okay. So yeah, and for example, other education and agriculture, they don't change much, but there is definitely some heterogeneity there.
Okay, so Brussels will be happy about the results.
Thank you. More questions? Please, Almas.
Okay. Thank you for your very interesting presentation. My question is, your sample is 2006 to 2014, and we had this global economic crisis in the between, and that will influence willingness or propensity to study, say international, and also it influences the wages. Your graphs didn't show clear difference between different cohorts wage development. Did you find any effect from this crisis? Because some of the students would have not studied if it was not because of the crisis. So their quality must be lower. At the same time, those who lose job and go back to education, they have experience which influences their wage level and development.
Yeah, thank you very much for this very good suggestions. Let me share my screen again, because I remember there is one graph that might answer this question. Okay. So if you look at this one, this is the starting wage level. You do see that in 2006 to up until 2009, it's still increasing, and while there's a dip. after that. And then it's until 2012 and 2013 it goes to bounce back. So, so I
did
think
you control for it in your regressions or not?
the year dummies are already controlled, but what I did, yeah, but what I did as an additional robustness checks is that I shrink the regression to only post-financial crisis. And what you can see is that the results are still there.
Thank you.
But yes, but I think the point on those students who already have some working experience and they are forced to do study, I think that's an interesting dimension that I can explore later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? While you're thinking, can I ask one? I wonder at those international programs, you mentioned in the motivation that people are concerned about Dutch cultural identity being dissolved, or if I remember your wording correctly, but is there a requirement for international students to learn Dutch? No. Within certain, because for example, in Ukraine, when international students come, they are taught in English, but at the beginning, but then they are supposed to learn Ukrainian within first year or couple of years.
Yeah, there's no such a requirement, but what I know is that for some programs, it's taught in Dutch. So then for foreign students who want to participate in these programs, they have to learn 1 year language. But that's not the one we're talking.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Elsa, would you like to ask your question yourself? There is a question from Elsa.
Oh, I see that. Yeah, in the chat box.
Yeah, did you control by the language or language group?
You mean the language group of the students, the home language? No, actually, but I do have their nationality. I do have the information where they are coming from. But since this paper is on native graduates' labor performance, so I'm not sure how I can add this dimension. Yeah, but I understand your point, because if this paper is about foreign students' labor market performance, of course you can always check which group of students with certain language will benefit the most.
But that would be interesting to address what Klaus raised, right? Kind of measuring the diversity of the program.
Yeah.
To use this information. But that's kind of maybe other contribution later on.
Yeah, that can always be added because this information is available.
Yeah. Well, if there are no other questions, thank you very much, Zhiling.